Hey, what's up? We are back for another weekly news roundup. Now, if you don't know the deal here, basically I've been doing these for the past few weeks. What we're going to do is just review all the news that happened this week. And if you have any suggestions for pieces of news that you want me to cover, please click the link in the description to my Twitter or my Discord and then just hit me up there with stuff you want me to cover. But let's get into the news going forward. This week was pretty eventful, all things considered. We don't have like a lot of news per se, but there's a lot of topics, but they're all related to three main categories, I would say. And then we have some smaller things at the front and back, but we're gonna get into that. Also, please like, favorite, subscribe if you enjoy this series or enjoy my videos. It helps support the channel, get the information out. You know how it is. Anyways, yeah, let's get into it. Boop, boop. Boop, boop, boom, boom. Yeah, my computer chugging. Okay, first piece of news. Yeah, apparently the Street Fighter characters Ryu and Chun Li have joined Fortnite, which I guess is a thing. I mean, Fortnite recently, or really over the past couple years, has evolved from being that one battle royale that everybody plays to let's cross over with literally everything in pop culture we can possibly get. So now we have Ryu and Chun Li in the actual Fortnite game. See? Even though I am absolutely certain everybody who plays Fortnite, or at least a majority of the kids who play Fortnite, don't know who these two are. Or have no exposure. But you know what? That's probably the reason why they're in the game, honestly. Capcom was thinking smart. They were like, alright, our games need to appeal to a greater audience. And, you know, Street Fighter really is a cultural icon. I'm sure the Fortnite people will be down for it. Apparently the Fortnite people are fans of Street Fighter. No shit, everybody's a fan of Street Fighter in some regard, especially considering the target demographic of all the things they keep pulling from. That's like, it's mostly older stuff. In fact, probably 80s, 90s. You can tell those are the type of people who make Fortnite, right? People who grew up in that era. So that doesn't really surprise me. And of course, Capcom is probably just doing this so that they can get more attention towards Street Fighter. It's a business call. I don't really care. Honestly, I don't think this is a great decision, but it's certainly something, right? And here's what they look like in the actual game. I gotta be honest, the designs are pretty soulless and don't really look like either Ryu or Chun Li. They look like Fortnite characters dressed as them, but whatever, don't really care. Apparently Ryu and Chun Li also have different costumes as well. Like, you can play bearded Ryu, if I remember correctly, and Alpha Chun Li. She's also apparently double cheeked up, and all the Fortnite people are just now starting to realize that Chun Li's thick. Really, you don't say. Kind of old news, buddy, but alright. And also, there was this excellent piece of artwork. Excellent, personally, to me, of Ryu and Chun Li in Fortnite. And the only reason why I think this is so excellent is Ryu's face, bro. He's so happy. Yeah. If you don't know, the artist behind this particular piece of art is actually Shinkiro, who is mostly known for his work on old King of Fighters games. This is the old SNK. Really, SNK artist. He didn't specifically do that, they just commissioned him. But yeah, he's the one behind this artwork. Which is funny because this isn't the first time he's drawn Ryu and Chun Li in them. Back during Capcom vs SNK, that game was also mainly penned by him and Kinu Nishimura. And Kinu Nishimura, they were basically it was tasked that one half of the game would be drawn by Kinu and the other half would be drawn by Shinkiro to create like a contrast. And I think at one point it was just all Shinkiro drawings. Like, you can find pretty much every Street Fighter character, or at least a good amount of them that were popular at the time, all drawn in this style. I don't know. It would be cursed if it wasn't for how happy Ryu is. And this is not like a different style. It's just, you know, it's... I guess this is the silver lining. This is now also my my Twitter icon. But anyways, moving on quickly. Okay, next point. Actual news. Enough screwing around. PlayStation had their, or Sony had their State of Play about a week after Nintendo did theirs. Very subtle. And it was something. I watched it on stream last night. I don't really have much to say about what was seen there. You can check out my Twitter, my Twitch account, and the VOD will be there, so you can go watch that there. I'm not going to upload it onto this channel because there wasn't really much to talk about, but we're still going to go and run through all of the stuff we've gone through that was announced. Now, the Final Fantasy VII stuff, I'm going to ignore for now because we're going to talk about that after this, because in much more detail, because there's a lot to talk about there. So we will get into that with time. Okay, so the first thing was more footage of Kena, Bridge of Spirits. I believe this was announced at a State of Play last year. This game looks really good. It's like a platforming adventure game sort of thing, kind of like Zelda, but like more like older Zelda, you know? I think this game looks gorgeous. It looks like a Pixar film that you can play, which is really impressive. Like, people might be more attracted visually to certain more photorealistic games, but I think, honestly, this is possibly the best game I've seen on PS5. Just because, like, a lot of more realistic games tend to have the problems with their textures always looking a little muddy or a little not as good, especially when, like, graphics might dip or here and there. But like a game like this is very consistent. I personally don't have really much to say about it. I think it looks good, but I'm not going to be able to play it because it's only on PlayStation, and I don't own a PlayStation. In fact, let's just preface all of my decisions with that. Another one they did was this Returnal Deep Dive, which is like this, it's very strange Death Stranding looking space game. I don't really have anything to add on that either, but you know, it's there. Oddworld, Soulstorm got another trailer where you go into more depth of like the mechanics and whatnot. Game's kind of like, this game is really old, by the way. It's like a very old, well-respected PS1 series. So seeing it in such high graphics with such fidelity and actual cinematography is pretty impressive. I think this game has a lot of potential for people who are a fan of this, but again, not personally interesting to me. And keep that in mind, I'm just not a Sony guy. Crash Bandicoot for some reason had a really long trailer. Crash Bandicoot 4, even though it's literally just talking about the fact that it's getting an update when it gets on PS5, like every other game is. It now has HD rumble and 3D audio support in case you really wanted to get immersed in a 2D platformer. But yeah, this game's good. So like, if that's your thing, then that's your thing. You can play it here if you have a PlayStation 5. We saw more of this Knockout City game that was announced during the Direct, actually. And yeah, we got to see more of the actual gameplay and how it looks on a nice graphics, and it's okay. As I said, I think this game's been getting a little bit too much hate. I actually think it's a pretty unique idea. Apparently, it's actually an indie game too. That is something that was specified in this that wasn't very clear originally, because they only showed that it was an EA game during the Nintendo Direct. But this particular one specified this is an EA produced indie game. So, very different scenario overall. Oh, okay, there was also this game that I think was actually pretty interesting. This kung fu game called Sifu that was announced, which is basically like every time it's like a brawling type game. Like you fight hordes of enemies with hand-to-hand combat and whatnot, but like it seems like every time you die you age and then you become like more powerful or something like that. I'm not entirely sure how this works. Yeah, they will get revived slightly older and more skilled. So it's like, I don't know exactly how that all work out, right? Because wouldn't you just die repeatedly and get better? Like, couldn't you just game over and over again and then get better at the game? Is the objective to not get too old to where you just straight up die? I don't understand. But it does look pretty good. It has a very specific, like, sort of polygonal design to it. I think it's on purpose, of course. I don't think that they would have a problem making it look otherwise. It looks interesting. It looks kind of fun. I am a huge fan of martial arts stuff, so that's probably why I'm saying that. But yeah, it looks interesting. That was one of the ones that caught my eye. Hyper Light Drifter. The developer behind Hyper Light Drifter is making this Solar Ash game. I think this was announced a while back, but it looks really, really beautiful. I can't remember how it plays, actually. Let me press this trailer. so I can refresh myself. It's like a 3D platformer from what I remember. Yeah, this game looks really, really good, especially considering it's from the same guys behind Hyper Life 3, which I'm pretty sure was an indie game. Oh, yeah. This game looks really, really fun because it's like super movement based. Like everything seems to be really flowful. You have the climbing mechanics, you have like this really fast running. Honestly, I think this is the kind of game that gets my attention because I love any game that has to do with movement. If I could be stylish and move, that's the play. And as far as I'm concerned, that's what I'm into, you know. So yeah, this game very much also gets my attention. Fortunately, again, PS4, PS5, no PC release, so I can't play it, so it doesn't even matter. We also got to see the first gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, which I'm not sure if it's a full reboot or something, but it is clearly, it's Five Nights at Freddy's, except you can walk around the place, and it's more like a standard horror game. I don't really care. I stopped caring about Five Nights at Freddy's so long ago because they kept releasing games to the point where you can't even keep up. I think I checked out around like post 4 is when it started to become really hard to keep up with lore and shit, especially since the only real way to do that was to just basically watch Game Theory. And yeah, he was pumping out too many videos for me to keep track, and I was just like, you know what? I'm done. I'm cool. I'm not going to keep up with this. But I think this is supposed to be like a full reboot or something like that. Or at least that's the impression I'm getting from it. But we'll clearly get more people. People are going to be interested in this. It's Five Nights at Freddy's. It gets a lot of attention. Good to see a Five Nights at Freddy's game that looks like it has an actual budget. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. We got another trailer for Deathloop. I still don't really care about this game. I think its aesthetic is great, but the actual graphical style used in game does not even come close to reaching the aesthetic they have for like advertising and whatnot. I just think it's a bit of a missed opportunity. I will say it is cool that it has two black protagonists, but it's also just like, I don't know, just kind of falls into that because it's a first-person shooter, it loses so much of its charm sort of thing, for me at least. But that's pretty much everything that was announced in the direct, barring the actual, not the direct, the state of play, barring the actual big announcement that everybody was talking about, because the rest of this stuff was like pretty much like, I don't know what it is about state of plays where they just like refuse to be as even remotely on the same level as hype as a Nintendo Direct. They don't even try. Like, they're really low-key with these. I think that's almost a good thing because then they don't have to compete, really. They can just do their own thing and kind of exist peacefully. People had problems with the Direct, but even then, I feel like a majority of people would still say the Direct was more exciting than this, you know? There was more stuff being announced, bigger things. It was a bigger deal overall. But hey, I haven't actually got the consensus. I don't think anybody's comparing, and I think that's a good thing. Stop comparing things. I think this was very solid, all things considered. It's just, you know, very low-key as they tend to be. But that's that as far as that goes. Time to move into the meat and potatoes. While I still have your attention, though, please remember to leave a like, favorite, and subscribe, and share this video around, if you haven't already. Okay. Final Fantasy VII Remake. Actually, more than Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII news in general. Following up from the state of play, I guess, to get this started, the thing that ended off the state of play was Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrated, which I actually already made a reaction to and posted on this channel, so check that out if you want to. I'll probably link it in the at the end screen. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII Integrate is it's pretty much free DLC if you have a PS5. If you have a PS5, you can upgrade Final Fantasy VII Remake into Final Fantasy VII Integrate, and you get a whole bunch of different quality of life improvements. They went into more detail in the actual state of play, but basically they upgraded the graphics, they added some quality of life changes. You have photo mode now added to the game. You have a bunch of other nice things added to the game to make it more enjoyable to replay or go through again. I really hope that all of these benefits, by the way, come to the PC release, because if they don't, that's going to really suck. That said, the PC release is still going to have the benefit of things like mods and whatnot, so I don't know, PC Master Race, just saying. Just kidding. But yeah, the main thing about this is that it comes with an additional story content focusing on the character Yuffie Kisaragi, who is a party member in the original Final Fantasy VII. However, this is a completely new scenario focusing on Yuffie in Midgard, being connected with a bunch of people from like the underground stuff from Dirge Cerberus and whatnot, which is a whole other thing. That's an interesting piece of knowledge, a little tidbit here and there. There's a lot more information included below, but we're gonna go into that a little bit later. But the main point is that you get all these different improvements to the game, and then on top of that, you also get this extra scenario where you get to play as Yuffie earlier, and you know that's gonna be story relevant. It's still a bit of a dick move, honestly, for people who only own a PS4 and can't get their hands on a PS5, considering how rare it is. But I guess eventually, the problem's gonna sort itself out, and then everybody's gonna just be able to have access to this when they get the PS5. It's a smart business move, I guess, but it's also kind of a little problematic, I have to say. It's a little bit of a dick move, not gonna lie. The next thing also, that after the State of Play, completely separate to the State of Play, Square Enix decided to drop 2 trailers for 2 different mobile games. The first one was Final Fantasy VII, The First Soldier, which is coming, I think, earlier this year, sometime sooner rather than later. I'm not entirely sure. We'll get into that. But this is I kid you not, a Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale game that apparently focuses on way back in the day, like probably 30-40 years before Final Fantasy VII. Shinra trying to pick out their the first members of their soldier initiative, which is basically like their elite private military, right? And this is literally just like, think Fortnite or like Apex Legends or something like that, except not even Apex Legends. That would imply like you're on teams or something. It's like a PvP PvE type game, right, where you're shooting people and you can use magic spells and you can summons and fight bosses and whatnot. Apparently this is supposed to have some story elements, but there's no clarification on that, if I'm correct. But that's certainly something. It's coming sooner rather than later. It's mobile only, but you know, you can always play it on the PC if you know the connections. But it's not a big deal. I don't think everybody's focusing on this particularly. It's probably something that a lot of people aren't even going to play, if I'm going to be real. But, you know, there's that. But then there's something entirely different. Something that's way more complicated. In fact, I might even need to pull something up for this. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. If you recall correctly, by the way, I didn't bring this up, but First Soldier and Ever Crisis we actually talked about before in a previous episode because the trademarks for these were filed a little while before. So we already had a hear of that. We originally thought that Ever Crisis would just be another Zack focused game, and that the First Soldier would be about Sephiroth. Turns out Ever Crisis is something way more crazy than any of that. Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis is literally a remake of the original Final Fantasy VII, except in a more turn-based and faithful way. And what I mean by the original, I mean like it's different from remake. If you guys didn't realize, by the way, and I know a lot of people who are just getting into the franchise might not realize this, Final Fantasy VII Remake is not a remake of Final Fantasy VII. It is, but it is in reality a sequel to Final Fantasy VII. And I can't stress this enough, that it is I'm very glad that they're making this remake, because it is very important for you to understand the actual plot of the original Final Fantasy VII if you're going to understand remake and remake part 2 and however they go from there, because they're very specifically drawing things from the greater compilation of Final Fantasy VII. I've been trying to say this forever. Y'all need to it's like I can't say this without spoiling it, and people aren't going to, you straight up not understand what I'm talking about unless you have the context. It's like I'm trying to get y'all to wake up. Man, open your eyes. I'm trying to get people to awaken and open their eyes so that they can see things differently, see things my way. You guys are blind. You don't understand. You're trapped. I'm trying to... You don't understand my frustration. It's so troublesome. But yes, this is a very good opportunity to get this, because it's going to be a far more faithful recreation of Final Fantasy VII's entire story. this in the form of a mobile game that's actually turn-based in mechanics from what I see. To put this into perspective, since I've been sort of dodging around the idea, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis isn't just a remake of Final Fantasy VII, the original story. It's also a full remake of literally every game in the Final Fantasy VII compilation. If you don't know what that is, Final Fantasy VII Original was just on its own, right? And then after the fact, Final Fantasy VII got really popular, and Square Enix thought it was a good idea to invest in a bunch of explorations of different parts of the Final Fantasy VII universe and create a greater universe to Final Fantasy VII than just the original game. This became the Final Fantasy VII compilation, which started off including Advent Children, which was the movie, went on to include Crisis Core, which was a game focusing on Zack Fair and a backstory about Final Fantasy VII. And then it had Before Crisis, and then also Dirge of Cerberus, which was like a sequel that's focused around Vince Valentine. That's terrible, but we're not going to talk about that. And yeah, all these other different things that happened in the Final Fantasy VII universe. Ever Crisis is what it's doing is that it's remaking all of those things in one specific focused chapter structured game where you can play through each of these storylines in a turn-based RPG format like the original game. But when I tell you that that is insane, I need you to stay with me on this, because this is ridiculously ambitious. You have to understand that them remaking the entire compilation in a turn-based structure is crazy, because not all of these games, well, not even all of these titles, might I should say specifically, are turn-based games. In fact, not all of them are even games at all. Advent Children is a movie, an actual feature-length film that they are remaking into a playable JRPG game that works on phones. Brother, sister, mother, uncle, you have to keep with me here. They're remaking a movie in a game form like this. And I have to say, this game actually looks really nice. I think it's really I think like the art style in general is very, very faithful to OG Final Fantasy VII with its sort of weird chibi models, while also being definitely a clean update. I'm actually excited for this, and I hope it comes to consoles. That is something. But it's wild. Dirge of Cerberus 2, by the way, is a third-person shooter. And they're gonna remake the whole game as a RPG. Final Fantasy VII Original in this style does not surprise me. Apparently they're gonna be cutting out like some of the more open world gameplay and trying to focus most of the stuff on like being like more linear. And they're gonna release like new chapters each and every month when this game eventually releases, I think in 2022. But yeah, I definitely recommend taking the time to go into this, even if you only played the original Final Fantasy VII, or if you're playing Remake for the first time now. It's very important that you understand what happens in these games. Trust me, Final Fantasy VII Remake, as I said, is not a remake of Final Fantasy VII. It is a sequel, and I know that doesn't make any sense. But if you learn, it'll all make sense. It'll all click together, and you'll be like, you will see things the way I see things. Wake up, open your eyes. That's all I can say about that. But we have more stuff to go into in a second here. I'm not going to go watch these trailers now, but I am going to insert my reactions from my live stream the other day right now. So this is what you're going to see in a second. If it seems like it's a little disconnected, that's what it is. Bear with me. They really remade Final Fantasy VII again. Crazy. On mobile devices. Hey, I can finally play the remake, boys. Another possibility for a remake? Brother. Another possibility. Y'all spent the whole dev team's time on another possibility. Word. Oh my god. Look at how wide he is. A nostalgic visual twist. Is it really? It doesn't really look like the... Oh my god, the portraits are nice. I'll give you that. Portraits are very nice. Well, this does kind of make me feel like OG FF7. I like the portraits. These are very nice. Sounds like something I'd make a profile pic out of. The very stiff movement. Yeah. They have the new designs, though. Now see, why didn't they remake Final Fantasy 4, 5, and 6 like this? They just ported the 3D version of 4, and then 5 and 6 they literally just made terrible graphics. They could have literally made this game look good, and they don't even care about those games. It's not Final Fantasy 7. They don't deserve it. I hate it. I hate it here. Was Aerith in the Scorpion Sentinel fight? That's weird. Seems like they took a lot of these animations straight out the game. Yeah. The entire compilation of Final Fantasy 7 and more. So we can play Crisis Core, but as Final Fantasies. Okay. Interesting. Okay, see, that's what I'm talking about. Get the original experience laid out for these newbies. That's what I'm talking about. Because you know damn well they wouldn't play it otherwise. And they're still not going to play it, if I'm being honest. But hey, why didn't they just announce this all at once? I mean, I guess they couldn't do the mobile things. 30 years before the event of Final Fantasy 7. Bro, how old is Sephiroth? Project Zero. I think that's the old president. Because I'm pretty sure Rufus isn't that old. Experimental core of Final Fantasy 7. Okay, it's mobile games. That's why they didn't announce that. Bro, this is Final Fantasy Fortnite, boys. Look at that building skill. We in Wutai. I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't look bad. This is so bizarre. They really decided to make a whole battle royale game. They really be reusing those assets. But you know what? Makes sense. Might as well. You're like, we have HD assets. We're gonna use it for everything. Can you become history's first soldier? Alright. Word. Ugh. It's mind-boggling that this is even a thing. Also, like, I'm not even mad. I'm actually excited about this because a lot of people have been complaining about the fact that, like, old Final Fantasy 7 fans, myself included, have been a little bit miffed about the fact that Final Fantasy 7 Remake, while it is very faithful in some ways and also has a lot of elements of a turn-based battle system, it being like an action game, a lot of people were a little miffed. They just wanted an update of the game. This is more or less what this is. Like, this really looks nice, and it has pre-rendered backgrounds that look like the original game. The models look nicer. I just think that this is a really nice sentiment, but I still think it's insane that they're actually going out of their way to remake some of these games that just straight up aren't originally in this style. Like, even Crisis Core has a very different gameplay style, and they're still gonna remake it here. Also, you got these new portraits for everybody in Ever Crisis, which look really nice. They're based on the redesigns, of course, Final Fantasy 7 remake. But they look really nice. Like, you got Jesse's with her new design, Biggs with his new design. I hope you all understand that because this game is going to be an accurate recreation of the original game, or at least that's what they're selling it as, for the most part. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is gonna be a lot more blunt than it was originally, which makes sense. Considering the game is pretty, I don't know, this section is going to be rather short. Just keep that in mind. I should also mention that there's literally no way they can write Advent Children without rewriting it. There's going to be some changes for Advent Children and Dirt to Cerberus, which is a good thing, might I add. Both of those games, both of those titles are a little iffy. But let's look into this interview, because we have a whole extensive interview being, I think, done by Aitai Kimochi, who's done a lot of Square Enix translations and whatnot about stuff. She's very reliable. Generally does a lot of information in general. Like, I think she also covered some stuff with Tweety not too long ago. So yeah, reputable source. This is on her actual blog here. So, you know, I'll read through this stuff and I'll spare you the absolute details. I'll just point out whichever points are very important. This is an interview with Tetsuya Nomura, who is the director, or at least was the director of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I actually recently learned that Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 is not actually being directed specifically by Tetsuya Nomura. It's being directed by his co-director for Final Fantasy VII Remake. He's just the creative director going forward, which is fine. Give him a break, man. They were really putting everything on his back for a while there. They were basically just using him for advertising beforehand, but yeah, it's nice to see them, like, the people in charge of the remake and a lot of this other stuff as well are also like Ever Crisis being written by the same Final Fantasy VII R writers. They're reliable. They already did a really good job with R as it is, so I'm fine with that. But yeah, going forward. Apparently they're saving a lot of the new features of the PS5's controller, like 3D audio and like HD rumble and that for the next installment. Oh, I didn't mention this, but in the DLC trailer for in Intergrade, right, the stuff with Yuffie, they briefly showed a character called Weiss, who's from Dirge of Cerberus, and apparently this character is not a part of the story. They are simply a bonus boss fight that you can fight in the main game with Cloud. So yeah, there we go. It's a super boss for all intents and purposes. He was but you designed the original Weiss in Dirge of Cerberus, but he was half naked in that game. It seems he's wearing clothes in this one. Since he's a secret boss, I wanted to present him with a sense of richness to it, so I gave him something to wear on top. Whoa. I don't actually know a lot of stuff about Dirge of Cerberus and whatnot. Like I've watched like a plot synopsis, right? But I didn't really pay that much attention to it. Okay, yeah, that's why I'm also excited for Ever Crisis, because I haven't actually played a lot of the compilation games, so this is a good opportunity for me to actually get into that stuff, you know. So apparently the actual villain character for the Yuffie DLC is going to be different than Weiss, even though he appeared at the end. So it's not going to be Weiss. Good to know. The new character Sonon is part of the other Avalanche branches, because there's separate ones, right? That and Yuffie isn't actually part of their thing. She's just there for materia, but then gets involved with the mission, so you know. And there's also a joint battle system, sort of. Like, Sonon is actually a playable character, which is interesting, but they have, like, dual combos. Like, you can have, like, there's a little meter that shows up, and then you can have Sonon do, like, a joint attack with Yuffie. And I'm going to assume that that's going to be a mechanic in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, because they've already mentioned that before. Okay, so apparently the first soldier, like we already knew, takes place back in the early days before Soldier was established at all. This is about the first soldier cadets and how it gets established. It's not going to have a lot of story, but there is going to be enough story building the backbone of Soldier in general. Apparently you have to do training in this game. So you have to go different situations. You fight things like the Scorpion Sentinel and other stuff. Okay. There's solo and trio battles, and the winner is the last person or last team standing. Okay, so maybe that Apex Legends comparison from earlier was actually pretty accurate. Right, it's basically using the mechanic of getting stronger over time in a battle royale, but combining it with RPG elements, which is an obvious comparison. It doesn't seem like we have a lot of on first soldier. I don't really think that's a very meaty topic in terms of a game. Like, I don't think there's a lot to that game, really. But, you know, let's get into the meat and potatoes. Ironically enough, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, the DLC, is not the topic that I'm interested in. Ever Crisis is what I'm concerned about. Also, while I'm on the topic, people have been saying that this game should get a port to console. I actually agree. I think it should definitely be on Switch at least. Like, I feel like the Switch can handle that game at least. Somebody did point out, I think in a tweet or something, where they mentioned, technically, yeah, Final Fantasy VII mobile games getting ported to consoles is not unprecedented, because the pocketed version of 15 is on Switch right now, and I think it's also on PS5 and also on like Steam and whatnot. So it's very possible we might get this, and I very much hope that happens, because it's important. Like, again, very important. I feel so bad for all you dense people who just don't know. I don't want to call you dense either. Really, you're innocent. You want to experience the original Final Fantasy VII game for yourself through this remake, not realizing that you're not doing that. It's like Kingdom Hearts, man. You'll never understand unless you do. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Okay, Ever Crisis, the story is before Crisis Final Fantasy VII. So the stories being included is Before Crisis, which is a Final Fantasy VII game. I'm pretty sure it was like a mobile game that focused on the Turks up until Dirge of Cerberus. So everything from Before Crisis, Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII Original, Advent Children, and then Dirge of Cerberus. Everything that happens there. It will use a battle system designed specifically for this system. Advent Children, which was originally a movie, will actually become a thing. He says so as much here. Titles are divided into chapters that allow you to have a free gameplay style. The contents will cover the original Final Fantasy VII and work its way through the compilation, including the first soldier. as well. Ever Crisis will also have part of the story within this game. In particular, since the story covers what happened before Soldier was established, we added in a part about that legendary hero's youth. In other words, pretty much in Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, is we're gonna get some backstory on Sephiroth, which we talked about when we heard about First Soldier in the first place. But Sephiroth never had actual backstory. We know where he came from, like why he exists. We know how he fell to the way he is now, but we knew nothing about his actual youth, his early days as a soldier, before he became a hero, all of that stuff. We don't know how any of that happened. This, I believe, has a ton of potential, especially since it's being written by the Final Fantasy VII R team. From what I gathered from Max's video, he was a little worried that this could potentially be, like, could ruin the character. Honestly, I don't feel like it could. Like, if it's handled well, I don't really think it would change that much, especially considering Sephiroth, who he was before, and Sephiroth, who he becomes after, are very different. So even if his character before isn't as cool as who he becomes, it still works, I think. But I still think this has a ton of potential because it's very much untapped, unexplored ground, and I think it's a long time coming, honestly. And it's the best time to do it, too, since the writing has been so solid lately, you know? I'm looking forward to that, personally. If y'all don't believe me when I say Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII are different entities, and Nomura himself said it here, the concept of this game is to use a Final Fantasy VII as a base that players can enjoy. The original Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier, and Final Fantasy VII are all separate entries. Wake up! Open your eyes! I'm telling you! I'm telling you! Brother, sister, uncle, mother, grandfather, grandmother, child, daughter, son, you gotta understand. I'm trying to help. You gotta get out of the matrix, bro. You gotta understand. Oh my god, y'all don't even know what you're involved in. It's crazy. You will not need to play each title in its entirety before the next. Rather, each title will have its own chapter that you can select and play. Right. Think of it like a chronology of Final Fantasy VII. So, like, these are all going to be, like, separate things, and you just click on them and you can get to do the chapter. I don't really know when they're going to be released, but, like, if they're going to release all of them at the same time, or they're going to release one of them first, and then all the other ones later. But, yeah, expect them to be released episodically each month, and each of them are going to be separate, so you can play them separately if you want to. Like, if you don't want to replay Final Fantasy VII Original, you can just skip to the other stuff, or if you don't want to do Dirge of Cerberus or whatever, you know? Which is nice. It doesn't force you to play, like, before Crisis, and if you hate that game and its story, you just have to grind through it before you can even get to Final Fantasy VII, the original, you know? The battle system in the original Final Fantasy VII was based on the ATB system, so we'll be going with that game style. Okay, so it's going to have ATB. The materia setup will also follow the original. Weapons materia, summons, and limit breaks can also be used, further opening the battle system. In other words, it's from what he's explaining it as, it's that the battle system is heavily based on the original Final Fantasy VII, which is a good thing. That game is very solid. Though, again, what it actually looks like in the trailer is very different, so I'm not entirely sure how that's all going to work out. But yeah, okay, we'll see when it comes out, when we get more footage of it, when the game comes out. Final note about Ever Crisis, that apparently they're still trying to work out the voice acting thing. So we're not actually sure if there's going to be any voice acting here. But apparently they're going to try and keep the voice acting to a minimum, which is a little unfortunate, but I guess it kind of sort of works for this sort of game. I think that is going to be a bit of a point of contention for experiencing some of these games. Because definitely Crisis Core, especially, I think, like Crisis Core and Advent Children are situations where you really, like, voice acting kind of made those experiences, like, you couldn't really take them out. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a point of contention, but given the fact this is a mobile game, and it's going to be really more straightforward, and like the original Final Fantasy VII didn't have it either, and they're probably going to have to change a lot of things already, it's possible that the experience can still be enjoyable, at very least if you just want the raw information. But then again, there's also going to be an argument that presentation-wise, it's gonna be better for the others. But like, obviously, this game doesn't look like it's gonna be. It's not really an upgrade on anything except for Final Fantasy VII, the original. This is the only thing that's an upgrade on visually, pretty much. And I guess resolution-wise over some other games in the series, but like, a lot of the older Final Fantasy VII games are very gorgeous. Square Enix is not skimp on visual. Oh, okay, it's called Intergrade in reference to the international version of Final Fantasy VII, which was the version that we got in the West, that eventually got re-released in Japan with a lot of upgrades. Like, one of the most notable ones is that, like, pretty much the final boss with Sephiroth in that game was super unfinished. Like, the animation for his supernova attack was like nowhere near close to the final version of the game, and then in the international version they made it like super duper dramatic and whatnot and added that back in. So again, that's probably what they're referencing. This is the definitive version. It has some upgrades, so they're referencing that by making it Intergrade. Still doesn't make any sense because that's not a word, but alright. That's pretty much all I have to say on this. It's pretty much all the information, which was pretty extensive. I think I've been talking way too long as it is. I'm gonna have to cut a lot of this out, but hey, we'll see how it all works out. So, apparently, on non-video game related topics, Nickelodeon recently announced that they are opening up Avatar Studios, a division ran by the original Last Airbender creators, to make animated series and movies in the world of Avatar, starting with an animated theatrical film. This is big. This is a really big deal. So, as we were talking about last week, right? We know about the Netflix train wreck that's coming about the Last Airbender, and we also know how the main, the original writers, the original directors. Actually, let me click on this so we can get more information off the top of my head. We know how the original creators, Michael DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, they left the Netflix thing because they thought that the series was not being accurate enough. Now they've opened up a whole studio in Nickelodeon where they're starting to do Avatar animated stuff again, which is a huge deal because if you don't understand, pretty much from my understanding, I'm pretty sure Michael and Brian left Nickelodeon at some point. They were like, we're not working with you anymore, or something like that. Or they would pretty much were under the impression, right, that they wouldn't be able to do any more animated stuff because of how Nickelodeon was treating Avatar back in the day. Because if you don't know, Nickelodeon they've tried to murder the Avatar franchise several times. They tried it originally with the Last Airbender. They tried to end the series at season 2, and if you don't know about the cliffhanger at the end of season 2, that would have been awful. And then later on throughout Korra, they basically did everything in their power to make Korra just like not go through. Like, they only gave them one season for Korra at first. Then they suddenly randomly decided, they were like, oh, this is kind of successful, and then commissioned another season which they weren't prepared to write for, so they had a whole ending for the series in the first season, and then they had to find a way to continue after that. And then after that, they were like, okay, we're gonna let you go forward with more seasons after that. They already knew about those ahead of time, but then they pulled those off of television and put them only on the website. And then they also basically slashed their budget at the last second. They screwed that series over. Like, a lot of people tend to rag on Legend of Korra, and mind you, this is for a good reason. Its writing is very rough, but I should mention that a lot of that reason why it is that rough is because of Nickelodeon screwing them over. Now, that being said, the reason why Nickelodeon is probably interested now is because, again, recently, the Avatar franchise took off in popularity when it finally came to Netflix. The original version, the original cartoon came to Netflix, and everybody started rewatching it again in droves. And when everybody started rewatching it, a whole bunch of new people got in on it, and Nickelodeon and Netflix started making bank like crazy. They were like, wow, this is super popular. So that's probably why they decided to make this animation studio, to capitalize on the popularity that both of these shows have found on there. Now, of course, I do need to specify some things, a few concerns that people might have. Of course, this is a great piece of news. As an Avatar fan, I'm very excited about more Avatar, because especially from the original creators, especially in animated form, it's just really, really hard to say that this would be a bad thing. There's not too many good things going for it, especially with a movie that has a lot of potential. A lot of people have actually been saying for years, pretty much, that they wanted the the comic books for Avatar that take place after to get animated, or they wanted the period where like Aang and all of them were adults that was referenced a lot in Legend of Korra to be animated. They wanted to see that kind of period, and we never got that chance because, of course, the series never got that far, right? But now we actually do have that chance, and it is monumental. But as I mentioned earlier with Korra, one has to remember that Korra is a very flawed series, and there's a reason for that. A lot of people don't know this, but the original Avatar: The Last Airbender wasn't made just by Michael DiMartino and Bryan Konietzko. It also had a third writer who split off in between Avatar: Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. He left to do his own thing between there, and that's another significant reason as to why Korra's writing is a lot more choppy and a lot of people have more problems with it. Is because these guys were now on their own, and the writer, the third writer went off to make his own show, that being Dragon Prince, which is also on Netflix. The third writer being Aaron Ehat's Justin Richmond. We'll say Aaron Richmond, right? He was actually a very long-standing veteran writer, and so his input contributed quite a lot to the guidance and direction of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So while Michael and Bryan have a lot of really good ideas and strong ideas as well, his input definitely helped shape that series into being as solid as it was. And that's the reason why why Legend of Korra suffers a lot in terms of writing. That said, I do think that there's still quite a bit of hope going forward, because while Korra did start off pretty rough, I do genuinely, personally think it hit its stride heavy in season 3. Like, I personally am one of the people who think that if Korra was as good as season 3 from the get-go, it would have actually been a really good series the whole time. But, of course, there was a lot of mistakes. Legend of Korra in general was a big learning experience for both of these writers. And I think that given the way that the place that they ended off on compared to the place where they started in terms of writing, is far better. And if they can keep that momentum going and keep improving and keep learning from past mistakes and making better decisions in general, I think they can actually potentially, they could potentially become great enough on their own to where any future Avatar projects could be rock solid. I'm actually pretty excited about this. We'll see, obviously. We'll see. But I think they have enough experience, enough solid ground to work on now that they can pretty much go in any direction. Never mind the fact that just in general, Avatar as a franchise you can literally do anything with it, because the whole point is that there's thousands of incarnations of the Avatar throughout time, so you can literally just reboot it as many times as you want. You can make another story after Korra, you can make several stories before Aang. There's tons of time periods to fill in. In fact, you could even just fill in later stories involving Korra or Aang, It's very much possible. I think I've recently had to rewatch Legend of Korra. I didn't have to, but I did. And a lot of it was very rough, but I think in terms of as a series, it gets better as time goes on. It's an upward ramp. Albeit season 1 and 2 are rock bottom, right? I genuinely find those painful to watch now. But I feel like it ramped up towards the end. It spiked in quality in season 3, and then it kind of dipped a little bit. But in season 4, but it was still very solid and very great writing in general towards the end, the later half of things. If they can keep that going forward, that's a great thing. Here's the thing, it's not like a series like RWBY, right? RWBY is a series that started off decent and then just got exponentially worse as time went on, mainly because its original creative mind sadly passed away. But that's a series that I feel if the more they add to that, the worst it could ever get. It can only get worse from there. As somebody who has very limited experience, just from what I hear from other people, it's one of those, it just keeps getting worse. But in the case of Korra, it started bad and actually got better. There's a very different direction or curve that it's going in at the moment. So currently, the Korra writers only stand to improve further. Meanwhile, the RWBY writers are in hell. So, that's my perspective on the whole thing. Apparently they're going to be debuting this stuff on Paramount Plus, Nickelodeon platforms, and other unspecified third-party stuff. as well as cinemas. I personally think they're probably going to put stuff on Netflix as well, considering how successful they've been. But then again, who knows? It's going to be on somewhere. You can definitely count on me to be on top of this stuff, because I was there with KOF from the very beginning. Like, I didn't catch the first season as soon as it was airing, but I caught it from like season 2 onwards. So like, I'm totally going to be there in terms of watching like these live. In fact, I might even make reactions on my backup channel. But yeah, no, I'm 100% there for more Avatar content. This series has tons of potential. It's very enjoyable. It makes sense, and I'm actually very glad to see the franchise as big as it is now, because I feel like it deserves it, right? It's a great idea, especially when it comes to the original series and its writing. That's all I gotta say on it, pretty much. It's interesting that this is happening. It's good news. Next point of discussion, the Pokemon Direct that happened 4 days ago. It's only been 4 days? What was I doing in that time? I guess, actually, yeah, a lot of schoolwork and whatnot, and I was streaming. But yeah. Pokemon Direct, just like with the Final Fantasy 7 stuff, I'll probably get a abridged version of my reactions from the live stream I did a couple days ago, and include them in the video here. Yes, I'm sure all the people who like Diamond and Pearl are hype, but I don't care because I never played this game, nor have I ever been interested in it. Honestly, I think I played it like one time on somebody else's thing. I don't know. Something about this game just never appealed to me. Now, black and white? Ho ho, now we're talking. The game's saucy. Chibi. I find this an interesting remake, because it's not like the other remakes. Well, I guess it sort of is like the other remakes. It's like we would have expected it to be Sword and Shield style, but this is really very much like the 3DS games. It's very much the same sort of style as the original, especially with everybody being so chibi. Albeit you have a wider range of movement and whatnot. The models are obviously updated. Pokemon Now, Brilliant Diamond, and Shining Pearl. But another story awaits, and you better believe they ain't gonna add any of that platinum content into these remakes, because they never do, which is so unfortunate. Okay, so this is like far in the past. See, that's actually interesting, because I didn't know how far before this was. As they do. How does the game play, by the way? Like, I know you run around the place Breath of the Wild style, yeah. I think I like the backgrounds. It kind of has this, like, water paint look to it, like Okami. But, bro, this game ugly. I'm not gonna lie. Oh my god, look at these trees. I mean, it's nice to finally have a game in this style, right? Go on around. Oh my god, you got a dodge roll. You can crouch and throw Pokeballs. Bro, they literally did not react at all to that. This looks like a fan project, I'm not gonna lie. That Pokemon was in like 3 frames per second. This game looked ugly. But it's nice to finally have a game like this. But this game looked ugly, you know what I'm saying? I think the character models are nice. I just think the environments are just terrible. Wait, are your picks for starter Pokemon? That's actually interesting. Hold on, your picks for starter Pokemon are actually Cyndaquil, Oshawott, and Rowlet? That's an interesting combination, because it's none of the ones that you would have expected from Sinnoh. I actually think that's cool. It's a blend of 3 different starters. They should do that more often, especially if they do more spin-offs. They definitely need to work on these environments, though. Like, for real. Yes, Arceus, Pokegod. Again, I think they should make this a series. Definitely. Most interesting. Okay, so the Pokemon Direct happened. Well, the Pokemon 25th anniversary presentation, because it wasn't technically a Direct, right? Just everybody called it that. And we got 3 major announcements. The first, well, actually, no, I guess not really 3 major announcements. We got 2 major announcements and a new trailer for Pokemon Snap. That was the first thing we got, was a new trailer for Pokemon Snap. And this game looks gorgeous, honestly. It looks really good. All the characters are super expressive. This game was made by Bandai Namco separately, so it's probably why it looks as good as it does. But it's very promising, very beautiful. We got to see some new stuff. Like, we got to see more of the not the trainers, but like the other characters. We got to see how this luminous ability works. You can like turn certain Pokemon shiny. Not like shiny, but you can make them like glow and whatnot. You can take a photo mode. There's like this whole like online infrastructure where you can post things online for other people to like rate and whatnot, like a social media sort of thing. And yeah, no, it looks good in general. Here's who looks like the main rival pretty much. But yeah, this game looks great. It's very expressive, very cute. It's just enjoyable to see in general. I'm sure anybody who's a fan of the original game is going to enjoy it. And yes, this is called the Lentil Region. Delicious. I love lentils. Moving on to our more meaningful announcements. The first one, actually, let's talk about, instead of talking about that first, let's talk about the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl remakes called Brilliant Diamond and a Shining Pearl. Not to be confused with Shining Diamond, which would be a JoJo reference. Which is probably why they changed it, honestly. I'm sure somebody brought it up. These games are interesting because they, like, in terms of the remakes, right? More often than not, the remakes have been trying to capture the style of the most recent Pokemon at the time. But these games, they're trying to be more of like a remaster of the original game style. These seem to be very much in line with how the DS games look just in 3D. Which, honestly, I respect quite a bit. Some people have complained about the art style, and yes, it's very chibi, it's very kind of goofy. But at the same time, it's also, I don't know. The old style of Pokemon games are just more solid than I think currently where the direction is. Like Sun and Moon, not Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield has been like very rough visually. It's also the only Pokemon game that came out recently that I didn't even bother playing. Like I just didn't want to. But these games being a little bit more accurate to the original actually do have my eye, because that actually does appeal to me. I think that being more consistent with what was originally worked before is a good direction to use this remake, because it could potentially be very good. And it's notable that this is not actually being made by the Pokemon Company. They outsourced for this one, which is probably why it looks so good and it's so solid. But yeah, this is just being straight up a remaster, more or less. It's like a remake using a lot of the old assets, a lot of the old graphics, just with a better style. A lot of people compared it to the Link's Awakening remake, and I definitely think that is a apt comparison. But yeah, I look forward to it. It looks nice. I don't expect to see any platinum content unless they do DLC for that, because that's exactly how ORAS was, where they didn't really include any of the different content from Emerald and whatnot. Then again, to be fair, that wasn't really, it's like Emerald's extra content really wasn't much at all, and they had the Delta episode, which was pretty much that but better. But yeah, we'll see what they do with this. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. It's just like a remake. It looks very nice. There's been a bit of controversy, but I really don't think you have to worry about anything. I think this is going to turn out well. I hope that the difficulty balancing is still as it was before, and they don't try to dumb it down like they did with a lot of the other remakes. I think, honestly, I'm a little happy the fact that that Game Freak isn't the one making this game, given what the next thing they announced looks like. Alright, let's get into the meat and potatoes. The next game that they announced was Pokemon Legends Arceus. Arceus, as they actually pronounce it, but I'm not going to pronounce it that way. I pronounce it how I want, alright? Arceus. And this game looks rough, but more importantly, it is a full open world Pokemon game finally. This is the kind of game that people have been like dreaming about for years. You want to run around. I actually even talked about this a while ago, I think. We could run around and play, pretty much catch Pokemon out in the wild, in the wilderness. Apparently there has been like some leaks where you can see people like climbing and doing all kinds of other things. People have been comparing it to Breath of the Wild, which I think is a disservice to Breath of the Wild, because this game looks ugly as hell, and it's also my god, the frame rate in this, it looks funky, bro. You straight up have characters move. You have Pokemon moving at 4 frames per second. This is a very concerning first look at the game. Albeit, this game is not coming till next year, so they can improve significantly on it. Will they? Probably not. This is the Pokemon Company we're talking about. But it is still noteworthy that it can be improved. And the gameplay, for the most part, looks interesting. A lot of these environments look cool. This is the kind of game everybody's been wanting to. I think a bit of a downside to this whole thing is the fact that like in terms of like interacting with Pokemon, they're not really all that expressive. This is actually being handled in-house, by the way, by Game Freak, which is yikes. But I know, I think it looks fine enough. It still has the regular Pokemon gameplay style, by the way. You can still encounter enemies and fight them, though you don't actually fight them to catch them. You fight them just for experience and whatnot. You have like a dodge roll mechanic as well, which I think is a little interesting. This is also taking place in Sinnoh way back in the day, before the region was fully established. So we're in the wild west of Sinnoh, sort of. Also, weirdly enough, by the way, this screenshot looks way nicer, by the way, in his actual environment. But weirdly enough, your starting Pokemon in this game are not the Sinnoh starters. In fact, they're everything but the Sinnoh starters. It's Cyndaquil, Rowlet, and Oshawott from Pokemon Generation 2, Generation 7, and Generation 5 respectively. Which again, I love all these Pokemon, so I'm entirely down for them. This is actually a really solid lineup. I love Oshawott, I love Rowlet, and I do also very much like Cyndaquil. So this is a interesting lineup, especially considering like this is a Alolan Pokemon, a Johto Pokemon, and a Univert Pokemon. These are from whole different countries in the Pokemon universe. But yeah, these are the... Like, I think this game looks better in certain environments, but I think the outside world stuff is really quite rough, and they do very much need to improve this by the time it comes out. But it is a good, interesting concept. I don't really know what it's going... The main gameplay objective is going to be, other than apparently we have to try and fill out the Pokedex, right? But for the most part, it is interesting to see Pokemon break the formula for once and do something entirely new. This is the kind of game that I personally was requesting. I just wish it looked a little better, but hey, at very least there's an attempt being made. I appreciate it. Just work a little bit harder. That, and they also, people were bringing up about Cyndaquil. They actually improved his model, that he's no longer just like sitting there without his flames. So yeah, that's a thing. That, and of course this game is named after Arceus. It's probably not going to be the only game of this style, by the way, considering they gave it a whole subtitle. But yeah, Arceus is most likely going to be the final Pokemon that you go catch, or at very least like a main part of the story. We still don't really know the story other than the basic premise that we got, but it is a very interesting look to things. We'll see. Also, yes, Ninja Dawn. These protagonists are definitely based on the original Sinnoh protagonists, but they seem to have a more ninja, old Japanese-y look to them, which is certainly interesting. I don't know. It's interesting. Definitely interesting to see where this goes, but yeah, it definitely needs some work. But yeah, I guess that's really all I had to say about the Pokemon stuff. Really, like, I thought I was gonna say more. Okay, final topic of the day. About damn time, running out of time. I have like a seminar I need to attend, so I'm gonna try and wrap this up quickly. But last piece of news coming from SNK Oda, Yasuyuki Oda, who's the director of KOF 15. We finally got confirmation that KOF 15 is going to have rollback netcode. And I always had faith that this game was going to have rollback netcode because of KOF 2002 Unlimited Match got rollback. I'm pretty sure also like a 98 Unlimited Match, Ultimate Match got netcode. So those are all previous games that they re-released, and they added a really strong internet framework to it, and it turned out very well. Those games have been praised to hell and back. I know some people have been a little bit concerned about the fact that this is being handled in-house, but considering they already implemented it successfully before, it's very good news in general. Now, if you don't know what rollback netcode is, to break it down in a very simple way, it's just really it's a really solid, advanced internet system that allows you to have very little latency or lag when playing the actual game. And it's pretty much become the go-to way to structure your online fighting game, or really just online game in general in the modern era. Like, if you don't have this, your game's pretty much considered to be dead at arrival, especially in the case of fighting games specifically. You can see that with other examples, like Samurai Showdown didn't have rollback netcode, and that game basically does not get played much at all. Albeit they're still supporting it. But yeah, to put it less simplistically, rollback netcode is a system that utilizes a predictive AI that reads the input of your opponent and predicts what they're going to do next and shows you that on your screen ahead of time. And the point of this is to create the illusion of a complete smooth connection between you and the other person. So like, while the information is being sent over here, the rollback netcode system is already predicting what's going to come up using extremely advanced AI processes and inputting that here. And then when the information finally happens and comes in, confirm whether or not that's actually what happened and what it didn't happen. Now when it checks, if it's right, it will continue on as it was, as if nothing happened, right? It's just going to continue playing the game as it was. But if it's wrong, it will roll back. It's going to go back to before that action happened and readjust it to what actually happened. And that, in that way, it manages to keep this system where things are always together without it being too awkward. Albeit, of course, you can get a situation where if it's constantly guessing wrong, it's going to keep rolling back and getting some wonky things happening. Luckily, the system, the AI is extremely advanced. It's very accurate. So more often than not, that does not happen. And on top of that, you can do other things like adjust the latency manually. Like I could put up to 2 frames of latency, and then it makes an even greater window or greater chance for the actual rollback system to work as intended. And this again creates a pretty much seamless online experience to the point where it's almost impossible to tell that it's even happening at all. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. It's a really good thing that this game is getting rollback netcode. That means this game really will be a great chance for the SNK KOF series to take off. To put this into perspective, not a lot of fighting games have this infrastructure currently, and the one game that is coming out that we've talked about before that has rollback netcode is Guilty Gear Strive, and that game is getting raving attention because of it. It's a very important thing to take advantage of in the moment because it is the hot new topic. If you have this, then your game is going to get a lot of attention. So it is very important that they did get this in here. It's still a work in progress, of course, but still, they're definitely working on it currently, and that's good news. People were actually literally spamming their videos all the time to get this implemented. So the fact that they got the news announced, it's very good. But anyways, that's pretty much all I had to discuss about here. That's all the topics we had this week. Quite a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of meaty discussions, though not technically all that many things specifically to talk about. There's a lot of stuff we brushed through in like the state of play and whatnot. But regardless, thank you guys all for watching. If you enjoy these videos, please like, favorite, subscribe, as already said. Please, if you want to get into contact with me, as I always say, please go into the description. You can send me any topic that you want to be covered, and I will consider it for these videos. Yeah, and also please click the link in the description if you want to watch my Twitch stuff or like my anime reaction channel. Those are down there. Thank you for all coming out. I appreciate you, and please have yourself a great day. Anyways, yeah, ciao.
ダメだねダメよダメなのよあんたが好きで好きすぎてどれだけ強いお酒でも歪わない思い出がバカみたい